What's going on, everybody? In this video I'm going to be setting up some more Exo Terra enclosures, so stick around. G'day, my name's Luke and I'm an avid reptile and amphibian keeper. On this channel you'll see DIY tutorials, care videos, herping clips and plenty of other animal related content. Please make sure to subscribe and check out what my animals and I are up to. Prior to doing that, I've just headed up to Bunnings, so I need to pick up a few supplies for my rough scale enclosure build and for these builds that I'm actually doing for these Exo Terras. We're going to set up 3 of them today. 2 of them are going to be for my common eastern froglets. They're in that zoom med enclosure that's a top opening enclosure, but it's up really high. So I'm just going to put them into some smaller Exo Terras that are front opening. It'll be a lot easier for me to access and actually feed them, clean them, do all the other sort of stuff. And the other Exo Terra enclosure I'm setting up is actually for a different animal that I'm going to be picking up today. The owner unfortunately is moving house and can't take this little one with her. But I've met this particular animal on one occasion and I was absolutely smitten with it. So I'm really excited to go and pick this animal up. It's a species I've never kept before. I don't know a hell of a lot about them, but having this animal in my hand, I was so intrigued and so enthralled with it. So I'm really excited to welcome this little one into my collection and give it a home. Let's get to it and let's go shopping. So we're back in the garage now after my little Bunnings shopping expedition, and I'm going to get cracking because I've only got maybe about 3 hours before I have to go and pick up this other animal. So these are the Exo Terras that I've got. I've actually got another larger one stashed away for another day too. I'm going to do a bit of a better build I think on that one. Not that I think these will be subpar, but being a smaller environment I have less room to kind of play with. So you have 2 of the 30 centimeter cubes, and we have one of the 45 by 45 by 30 centimeter high small lows. So that's my first one in this size actually. We're going to go through and get all these out of the box, and we'll come back and a bit of a better look at them. So as you guys know, I absolutely love Exo Terra enclosures. Their functionality is just second to none. Like, just having the little locks down the front here and not having to use like a key turn system is absolutely brilliant. The new kind of twist lock system for the lids to come in and out is absolutely fantastic. The only downfall, if I was to say there's a downfall, is they just need to do a better variety of backgrounds that are maybe a little bit more solid, but that's the only downfall. The glass is fantastic, the enclosures are fantastic, the silicon's fantastic, the airflow is fantastic. I really can't fault these things by any means. Now, I'm not getting paid to say that at all. I bought these on my own dollar through the shop. So, you know, by no means am I sponsored by Exo Terra. But hell, you know, if they want to throw me some products, I'm all ears. Nonetheless, I need to get cracking on these. So these 2 enclosures here, the 2 12-inch cubes, that's actually going to replace my common eastern froglet tank up here. Reason being is that's a top opening tank. These guys having swing doors at the front and being up high is just going to be way easier for me to actually get in and clean them, as I said previously. And this tank here is for our new little resident that's going to be coming in later today. We're going to set these all up bioactive. I'm probably not going to do plants or anything in this one to start with. I just want to kind of make sure that the animal kind of acclimates into my environment here pretty easily. But these 2 here, I'm probably just going to deck them out with some Pothos and just easy stuff. So nothing too crazy to start with, but I just need to crack on and get these guys going. So the one thing I am going to do is I am going to replace the backgrounds in these 2 smaller tanks. I'm going to leave the bigger one for now, and we'll maybe come back and reassess it later on, and if I want to put something a bit different in there, then I will. I'm maybe thinking down the lines of like a universal rock background or something for this tank. But for now, I've got a couple of these other Reptile 1 foam backgrounds kicking around. Now it's a bit, you know, taboo to kind of put another competitive brand into another tank, but the density on this foam is just a lot nicer. They also sit a little bit flatter, which, you know, pros and cons to both, right? Like this is a nice little background and it does have some nice grooves and everything to it, but it's also got these little gaps on the back where animals can kind of go behind and get stuck and, you know, you may never see them again. Whereas this is at least nice and flat, so I can squeeze it in nice and tight if I cut it properly, and it's just going to sit nice and flush in the back there, and animals won't be able to get behind it. Anyway, I'm going to trim these up and get onto it. Well, there we go. Managed to get all the backgrounds done with those excess Reptile 1 backgrounds, so no complaints out of me. These are looking good, they're nice and tight, they're not going anywhere. Next step, of course, is a drainage layer. So for these two tanks here, I'm going to use the scoria, same as what I had in the other frog enclosure that I used not too long ago. So we're going to put that in there. And in this one I've actually got some clay balls kicking around, so I might put those in there just because they physically are lighter, and this is a bigger terrarium, so you know, if I go to move house shortly or something like that, which I may be doing, I want this to be a little bit easier to carry around, of course. So I go and chuck some of this in here. Hopefully it doesn't make too much of a mess. This bucket's been sitting outside for a bit and it has been raining, so there is a little bit of water in here. Onto my final bag. I can't say that I'm disappointed with the scoria. It'd be nice if it didn't have so much colour to it, I think. But it is a product, like it's physically reasonably light, just kind of like the clay. But it just does have a lot of pigment to it, so you know, take that for what it's worth. I think in future I'll just be going to clay balls. Alright, so I'm happy with those two. I've actually just got some clay balls from this for this tank here. Now these are awesome because they are super light. So yeah, I definitely see myself using more of these in the future. I'm lucky it doesn't need to be too deep a layer. I just scored those off eBay. There's a few people selling them up on there. Next step, we're going to need a drainage layer. Now in the past you would have seen me using my aggregate fabric, the drainage fabric. I'm going to use some fiberglass fly screen this time around. You know, I'm just happy trying different things. The reason I'm using this, so it's very porous, so hopefully not too much of the dirt goes down into the drainage layer, but you know, hopefully the plant's roots can actually go down and still drink from the bottom of the terrarium. So I'll give this a go and see how it goes, and you know, I'll kind of size it up, and whether I use this again in the future, I'm sure I will. So the next step from there is obviously to add in some sort of substrate that your plants are going to be able to grow into, and it's going to also house your animals, of course, so you know, it's got to be animal friendly. For me, I'm going straight back to Yuki mulch. I honestly love this stuff. I use it in absolutely everything. It's dirt cheap, you know, it's completely natural. We are in Australia, eucalypts are everywhere. Here we go. So from here, just going to fill in a decent layer of each of these tanks and kind of move it around a little bit till I see fit. Usually I try to scape it a little bit deeper towards the back, and then that way a little bit shallower towards the front. Not only is that awesome for the depth perception from looking into the tanks, but it's also good because the higher areas will actually create a little bit of a drier substrate as well, because it's further away from the moist bottom of a terrarium, and it just gives the animal somewhere different that they can kind of choose where to sit in different humidity gradients as well. So before I go any further, I actually need to add some heating into this terrarium here. The animal that's actually going to be going in here is a cool climate species, but in saying that, it does need to be able to bask a little bit, so I need to add something in. For this animal, I'm actually going to make up a heat mat essentially by using a couple of tiles. These you can just pick up from Bunnings for super cheap, or you might even have them lying around the house. But what I'm going to do, essentially use those and sandwich a little tiny heat cord through them and kind of tape it with gaffer tape shut and bury it underneath the substrate. This particular heat cord, I'm not sure if it goes for all heat cords, but this particular one's actually one made to go inside an aquarium. It's not a reptile branded one, but you can use it as a heat cord for a reptile. The best way to kind of get some maximum heat out of it is obviously just make the coils a little bit tighter inside of your heat pad per se. So yeah, I'll just chuck the time lapse on. I'm simply just going to tape down little rows of this. There's not much to it, so it might only be like say 4 rows. And then from there, I'll kind of like seal it shut with a bit of the tape as well. I know using tape's a little bit taboo in reptile enclosures. It is something that I've done ever since I've kept reptiles, but I make sure to use gaffer tape. Now, it sounds really harsh, but in my personal experience, I've never had any issues with reptiles and this tape. The one thing you want to make sure is, you know, if there are any kind of sticky elements to it, to obviously, you know, seal those up shut. You don't want any sort of like stickiness from the tape to be able to be contacted with the reptile and get them stuck on it or anything like that. A good way to actually stop any stick, if there is kind of any leftover tackiness, is use a bit of the substrate. Just put the substrate into the sticky part, because once that's down there, the dust from the substrate is just going to kill all of the tack to the tape. Alright, let's do it. So here's just a quick look at that heat map, if you will, that I've just made up. So essentially it is just a couple of tiles with a heat cord in between it and that little bit of tape. This will actually give the animal an opportunity to not only come out and bask, you know, in a little hide in here, but it'll also give it somewhere that it could dig under. So if it wanted to kind of, you know, have a little burrow down like that, then it could kind of just have some top warmth, or it could sit there for that as well. I will probably hide these in a little bit better with some, you know, bits of cork bark and things like that as well. But for the time being, this is going to be plenty enough for this animal. Now, I've just had to make a little notch out of the top there as well, just to make sure that I can get the power out as well. But apart from that, this tank's pretty much ready to go heating wise. And these two aren't going to need heating. They are going to have a T5 above it that's full plant spectrum, so they will have a little bit of warmth. But yeah, it's just about time to get some plants and other bits and bobs into these tanks. So now that that's done, I've taken the liberty and actually pulled apart the common eastern froglets tank. And turns out my Pothos have absolutely gone mental in there. This is one of the bigger bits. I've also got a couple of smaller pieces too. So what I am going to do is I am just going to put one bit of these smaller Pothos into the 2 smaller tanks, and I will give my new resident animal that will be coming shortly one of the bigger bits of Pothos as well, just to kind of grow in this tank as well. But just so I kind of know what space I'm going to work with, I'm going to start putting some water bowls into these smaller tanks. I'm actually using these Reptile 1 corner water bowls. They're just nice and shallow, easy to clean. They're quite large too, so especially for the common eastern froglets, it's enough for them to actually breathe in should they want to. Not that I'm expecting it necessarily in there, but you know, it's always nice to give them the option. You know, I think there are species that I will kind of have to stimulate with maybe a rain chamber or something of the sorts. But I think once they get going, it's going to be hard to stop them. Okay, so still got a fair bit of land area in those 2 tanks. So what I'll probably do is just do the Pothos in the opposite corners to where the water bowl is. I absolutely love this plant. It's so hardy. Like if you kill this, you're doing something so wrong. It's so forgiving. You know, if it starts to look like it's a little bit wilted, then all you have to do is kind of give it a jet of water, and it usually comes good pretty quick. I actually just reckon it looks fantastic as well. nice big leaves, so for things like the common eastern froglets, there's plenty of surface area they can actually use to hop around on and hide between. The reason I try to get the plants and the water bowls in first is mainly just because then you kind of know what space you're going to be working with after that's all in place. So I'll do the same on this tank. I think for this fella I'm just going to give him a smaller water bowl to begin with, probably nothing too flash, so I won't pop that in just yet. We'll get the plant going in there. I'll start it up towards the back too, so then it can kind of grow forward, and maybe we'll put the light towards the front just to try to encourage it to kind of fill in that way. I'm so excited to get this animal. It's just a species that when I first met this little dude, I'd never seen one in person, but this particular animal was just so chill. They're not necessarily renowned for handling or anything like that, but it's a small species of animal, so you know, should I move into an apartment later on, something that I can take with me quite easily. And I think this little habitat will be plenty for him too. And we'll see how we go with that. Now there's a multitude of things that I've got hiding underneath this table to kind of fill in a bit of extra space. One thing I do have here is a bucket of rocks, and they're all just different types of rocks. You know, nothing too special, different types of river stones and pebbles and things like that, but what I'm going to do is just try to create a little bit of a, you know, different scape in here as well. Add a little bit of texture. Not going to go too mental on it, but it's just good to kind of put something else in there to kind of break up the Yuki mulch and the leaves and things. Also gives a different texture for the animals to hang around on. And something else I do have kicking around, little bits of cork bark. It's a little bit hard to come by in Australia these days, but sometimes you can get it from things like orchid nurseries and the likes. But this is really good because not only does it look supernatural, but for like these little frogs, for example, it's hollow enough that there's enough hiding space under there that they can actually have somewhere to kind of just get out from, you know, so they don't feel so exposed. So I'll put a few bits of this in there. I'm just going to add in this other bit of cork bark here. This is a nice one, it's got a nice little hollow on it. We'll just give somewhere for the animal to hide away from the heat should it want to. So from here, let's add in a few little branches and logs and things of the sorts. I'm going to break a few of these up. This will just add a bit of texture into this animal's enclosure. If you've gotten this far in the video, let me know what you think that I'm actually coming home with. I'd be interested to see what your guesses are before you actually get to see it. No cheating either, don't skip ahead to the end and see what I'm getting and then comment. So the one thing that I find that makes a good bioactive terrarium is just loads of different textures. So rocks, plants, logs, leaf litter, different types of substrates and things. Okay, so that tank's looking pretty good. I'm happy with that. Get a couple of these branches going in these tanks. So I don't have too much leaf litter kicking around at the moment, but what I will do is I will actually recycle the leaf litter that was in the common eastern froglet tank. We'll try to disperse this throughout these 3 enclosures. So the tank that they were in was actually a Zoomed open top tank, or slide top tank rather, and it was 700mm long by about 300 deep, so it is a slight downgrade for the frogs to be put into these 2 terrariums, but in saying that, it's going to be way easier for me to access, and I will split the lot of them up. So, you know, keep in mind these frogs are about yay big, so they're tiny, tiny little guys. They're not going to take up a hell of a lot of room. But it's just good to be able to actually access them from the front, especially when I'm working at a bit of a height. I think the only other thing that I'm really going to have to add into here is some live animals. in the form of springtails. If I've got a few extra slaters kicking around, I'll use those as well. They've been a little bit slow to culture at the moment. But my springtails have been going nuts. I've been feeding them heaps of yeast. So they've been going mental. I don't know if you can see all those little guys in there. I'm hoping to do a video soon to actually show you not only how to culture these, I know there's plenty of videos on there how to do it, but I'm hoping to bring them out in a bit more of a commercial scale to Australia as well and be able to post them around, so stay tuned for that. I've only got 4 cultures now, but I'm planning on making maybe another 10. Then I'll be able to start doing starter cultures from there. You see all the little life wiggling around in there. I'm going to spray some dechlorinated water in with my springtails just to kind of get a little bit more water in those containers. Then I'm going to seed all of these terrariums and get the roofs on. And we're going to hook up some mist king nozzles to these two. That one's not going to need it so much, I might just hand mist that tank. And then from there, I'm going to put these into position, get the little animals into them, and get them going, because I'm running out of time before I need to go and pick up the new resident to this tank. Time to talk to the green stream frogs. I love talking to these little guys, they call back all the time. So that makes 4 of these 12-inch cube terrariums, all bioactive. These are the 2 that I've just done today. So these 2 are going to house the common eastern froglets. I've got 7 of those, so we'll split them into some smaller groups. And these 2 are empty at the moment. I've done these a little while ago, but I'm planning to have a species in there hopefully soon. I'm awaiting an advanced amphibian license to be able to hopefully get my hands on them. But I think it looks pretty cool, a little row of all the same terrariums. You can see that they're all hooked up to the Mist King system. They've all got those T5 plant grow lights above them. Yeah, it's looking fantastic. So I'm going to get these little frogs in here. Next to these terrariums is actually my newest gecko, the Cornutus, the northern leaf-tailed gecko, and I've got my velvets over in that tank there. That tank's pretty sad, so I'm actually planning to move the Cornutus into that tank just because that's a little bit taller, and I've got a 45 by 45 by 60 tall tank for the pair of velvets that are in there, so that'll give them heaps more room to run around and hopefully not bother each other so much. But yeah, look out for that one in the future. Maybe when you have to use a ladder to get to your reptiles, you might know that you've got a few too many perhaps, but won't be like this forever. I'm going to get these little guys out of here now. I've got a couple of larger animals that I'm pretty sure are females, so I'm going to try to make sure to split those into 2 different terrariums here. Bouncy little frogs. Whew. After a long day, I've just gotten back home. from picking up probably one of the coolest little animals I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And without any further ado, I'm going to let you meet him too. So here we are. I finally got this little critter. I feel very humbled to be able to be given this little guy here. And this is a little Oakley Skink. Isn't he just like the cutest little... He's the cutest little thing ever. Come on, focus. It's not going to focus for me there. That's okay. So this is a Oakley Skink. They're a cool climate species. I thought they did actually like a little bit of basking temperature. Turns out they don't so much. So I've actually just quickly removed that heat tile that I made a little bit earlier out of his enclosure because he doesn't need it. And he has never been kept with heat. So, yeah. What a cool little animal, hey? He almost looks like a cross between a miniature blue tongue and like a little pygopod or a scaly foot or, you know, Burton's legless lizard type thing. But this little dude is fantastic. He flicks his tongue like a little snake, just like your scaly feet. Don't know if he's going to do it for me now. What a cool little animal. So a very crepuscular animal, meaning that he likes to kind of hunt more likely in the morning and in dusk. This little guy loves to eat crickets, woodies, little mealworms. And he's just so different to every other kind of skink species I've ever owned. I've only ever really owned, you know, your shinglebacks, your blotchies, your big blue tongues and stuff like that. I've never really mucked around with small skink species, and hopefully this isn't another wormhole to go down, but we'll see how we go. Marcus Healy, don't start hitting me up with weird sort of skinks and putting them in my hands. But yeah, what a fantastic little animal. I'm sure he's going to love his new little house too. Let's go and check that out now. So this is where Oakley, the Oakley Skink, will be living. It's not a name that I chose. He's come with this name. It's actually quite a good little name for such a little good dude as well. He's a fantastic little animal. He's had a bit of a tough trot of a life. He is actually originally a rescue, gone through a few of wildlife carers and things like that, and been very well looked after by my friend. So we'll let him go in here and see where he wants to explore. His tongue's flicking like mad already. We'll see if we can follow him along. He's probably just going to duck straight into here and just disappear like that. Look how he holds his legs against his body too, just like a little snake. I'm sure he's going to love this house. Temporarily, he's going to be housed on the floor. That's not for long though, because as I get my rough scale enclosure finished, which is like days away from being finished, if that, he'll eventually get moved up next to Loki's tank. I've completely lost him now. Oh, there he is, checking us out from back there. How cool. I'm sure this guy's going to absolutely love this little enclosure. As I said, I didn't connect this one up to the Mist King system. I don't plan to either. The Pothos I'm just going to literally water myself, just because I don't want him to get too moist or too humid in there. And hopefully he loves this little enclosure. He's got heaps of these bits of cork bark to hide under, so there's plenty of hiding space for him. He's got leaf litter to run around through, little branches to climb across. He's got a background he can climb. He can even get in on the plants. Oh, that cute little face. Oh, there's that tongue. Honestly, my heart's just melting watching this little skink. This guy is absolutely fantastic. As I said, I feel so privileged to
be able to keep this guy. And you know, thank you so much to Trista who has handed me across this beautiful little animal. I'm sure he's going to be well loved here. I can't wait for Danny to meet him.
Alright, so let me just quickly tell you what the plans are here. And make sure that you guys are aware that he's not going to be staying on the ground for long at all. The Ruffy enclosure is so close to being done. It's going to be a cool video that comes out on that one, so don't you guys worry, you're not missing out whatsoever. But once the 2 Ruffies are out of there, they'll be going into that enclosure. The 1 water python that's left in there will be going over into this snake rack here, and the brown tree snake that's up in that tub there will probably just be living on top of Loki's enclosure here for a little bit. Then this guy will be going over into this corner. I'm going to build a little bit of a shelf that'll just kind of cozy him in there. And then we're going to be putting the other big Exo Terra that's the same as this on top of there. That'll probably eventually be the brown tree snake's enclosure, so there we go. So we'll probably end it there for today's video, but I hope you guys really enjoyed coming along for that little ride, making up these Exo Terra enclosures. I reckon they look fantastic. As I said, I'm a big fan of Exo Terra enclosures. I reckon they're absolutely awesome. You know, I can't really fault them by any means. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and a comment down below, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.